What's up guys, Ben here bringing you another video today. We're gonna talk a little about the rumored Florida roster. It seems like that's locked and loaded. So let's talk a little bit about it, where they fall as a team, how these moves stack up compared to other teams this season, and where I think they may land to start off and finish the year. So let's dive in. All right, so the biggest thing to talk about with Florida, before we even dive in and talk about rosters, is contextually this team isn't always going to have like the best Rostermanias of all time. For a very simple fact, really. We talk about teams like FaZe and Optic and Thieves, and those are teams, and even Minnesota as well, have infinite checkbooks for the most part, right? They're going to be able to spend whatever they need to get players. Florida and their parent organization have never really shown that they're willing to kind of go to that depth. So the best way to always look at this team is similar to like the Tampa Bay Rays. If we're going to pick an analogy from a pro sport team that's also in the same state, they're going to need to invest a lot in young talent, develop those players, build sort of a team that overperforms, because they're never going to be able to go out and really spend on key free agents and blue chip players. So right now it looks like this is the roster. Is a Jacob Hale tweet from last week. Vickle is coming over from the Toronto Academy sort of structure with Singularity, and he will join Brack, Havoc, and Major Maniac rounding out the 2023 roster. Dave Patty, I assume, will be sticking around as a substitute and fifth on this team. And I think before we even kind of analyze this roster, let's talk a little about their team, their last team. I mean, you look at kind of where they netted at the end of the season. They fell short and didn't qualify for champs. They had some decent land placings, mostly via beating Optic, and a few other quality wins along the way, but most of the other gameplay this year was meh. I mean, let's be honest, not really excelling in any game modes here. And there are other couple like really kind of mind-blowing things. They were actually one of the better Gavitude teams pretty much all season. So like they started out the year being that sort of 3AR team. Everybody was memeing them and they were good on Gav, but you threw them on Bocage, you threw them on say a Tuscan that was a little more balanced in terms of weapons. And they really were not able to hold their own against most of the other teams in the league that were sort of in those upper tiers. And I think this is actually a pretty telling stat to me on sort of this team. It's like they actually didn't do a bad job in game ones. I think they were also ending up sort of not winning a lot of coin flips, so they were getting one of their better hardplay maps, but really struggling off pick in SND in those game 4 picks where say if they're not the higher seeded team, that team's getting their better hard point in game 4. Like I think there's the depth of strats, the depth of map pool in this team, and their lack of flexibility wasn't that good. At the end of the season, obviously they made some changes. They sent Reese Vivid off to Boston, which didn't really work out for them. They brought in Two Real, who really struggled. So I think going into this season, it's very much a reboot of the project, right? Skies is gone, Awakening's gone, and kind of starting a new sort of 2-year project and how maybe they can go back to building a contender like they were during the Modern Warfare years. So let's talk about the CDL players on the roster first, the ones that played matches in the Pro League this year. You got Havoc, who you see from his headshot was at one point on Florida, and obviously there's a story to be had there by him coming back, but played a majority of the back end of the year with Minnesota Rocker. Major Maniac obviously was on Minnesota, was then on Florida, was then a free agent. It sounds like he's now back to being on Florida. I think the immediate thing that stands out to me with both these players is how they are historically very good S&D players. Obviously the numbers for Havoc I don't think really line up to that, but he's always been known as that search guy. Mike, same thing, always been excelling in that game mode. So instantly to me, I think like before we even get to the Vickle and Brack thing, like I think on the Florida side, they're like, look, we're not gonna get the firepower to build some killer all-star respawn team. Well, let's build a team that we know is gonna win those game 5s and game 2s. Let's figure out how to get to about 40-45% in the other game modes, and we might actually be able to sort of build a really good window for our team to win. So I like it. My only kind of concerns with this team, obviously Havoc isn't the most outstanding SMG slayer in the world. I think that's okay though. He's a really good piece to build around, and whether him or Vickle will really be sort of the sub duo that finishes the season, I don't think it's a bad kind of reach on their end. He's also brings a lot from a leadership standpoint, and we'll get to that in a minute. And Mike, same thing in that regard. My knock on Mike though is as a respawn player, he is not the fastest player in the world, and I think that's something he'll need to improve a little bit this year. I know there's some rumors that this game may play a little bit slower with that like slide cancels and all that stuff, so we'll see. But Mike historically has not always played on pace to his team in respawn game modes, and I think he'll need to work on that this year. So let's see what happens. So let's talk about the challengers players they're picking up. So Brack finally getting his shot back in the top level. Obviously had that really good run in the Blackout 4 years. Obviously he was on the Toronto Ultra roster in the beginning of Modern Warfare, but it didn't really work out, and he's sort of been trying to find his way back since, and finally is getting a shot. To me, I would love to see the takeover version of Brack that we saw at times in Black Ops 4 kind of come into play here. I think that would be an an incredible kind of sort of ceiling pusher for this Florida team. He played really well in challengers all year across all game modes, but as always, guys, take these stats with a grain of salt. The level of talent in challengers is different from the pros, but I do think that Brack can slay with the best. In terms of him kind of slotting in this team, I feel like it seems like he's going to be in more of that flex or second arrow role. I think he can definitely run a sub at times, but I would like to see him with AR in hand, and we'll have Vickle kind of run a sub, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I like Brack. I think it's worth giving him a shot. Obviously, for Florida, it probably wasn't too expensive to get him, and I figure at this point, he's going to need to make the most of this chance on a CDL organization. Vickle's an interesting player to me, one that I think kind of came on the radar this year. Vickle's actually been playing for a while, especially locally in Spain, but he wasn't of age, I think, to be eligible for, CWL, CDL teams. And then this year, he really took a step up and joined that Toronto Ultra NA Academy team, and they were obviously super dominant for most of the back end of the season once they formed. I know he ended up then kind of playing, second or third fiddle to guys like Mohawk and Scrappy, but to me, I like Vickle here. He's a kind of a gap fill type of player, at least that's a play that him and Higgsy sort of played at times on that Toronto Ultra Academy NA team. The thing I also like about Vickle is he's very super passionate. He's definitely going to be invested. He doesn't seem like someone that's going to come in and get kind of phased by all of this. When I kind of talked to him in person, especially at Pro-Am, like he seemed like he sort of understood the path in front of him and was committed to the grind. And I think that's what kind of the players that Florida needs, right? They're trying to build a new culture with all these outgoings. And honestly, the culture they had before was like, we're good, maybe we beat some good teams, I don't know, but like we're just kind of collecting cash a little. I feel like this team's going to have a huge chip on their shoulder, and I think Vickle will help contribute to that. So look, overall, I kind of like the package of all of these players. I think for Florida, you could have gone a couple of different options here. There may be some veterans that they could have gotten if they wanted to spend a few extra bucks, but I think they went for more of a value pick. And then from there, if they want to make further changes to this roster throughout the season, they can figure it out. Obviously, Dave Patty is sitting on the bench, so if for some reason, say the Major Maniac thing doesn't work out or Brack doesn't work out, they can always call Dave up or pick up somebody else. So we'll remain to be seen if this roster makes it through the whole season. So where do I think this team nets out kind of relative to other squads in the CDL? Look, they don't have the talent of a team like FaZe or Optic or Thieves or even a team like LAG. I think for this team to exceed, it's going to be an elite S&D squad, stealing respawns, and really kind of taking advantage of what seems like a rumored very quick start to the season and ride that momentum. I could see them being sort of back-ending sort of even a top 4 or top 6 at the first event, but I expect this team to be sort of kind of in the same spot they were last year, maybe a little bit better. I think this team is good enough to qualify for champs, but I don't expect them to be sort of in the upper tiers of teams. I think this is at best probably a top 6, top 8 roster. At worst, they're sitting at the bottom. If things don't click, if they really struggle in respawn especially, I can see this team really not really getting a foothold in things. But it's not bad business from Florida. I think this is a multi-year plan. Even if, again, this year is sort of whatever, I think your goal is to qualify for champs. Be there at the end of the year. If you go and get top 6, top 8, so be it. Kind of put yourselves out there as a really good project, and maybe you take some crack at some bigger players in the offseason. Maybe make some mid-season adjustments. This is not a team that I'm expecting to win initially. It's a multi-year project, and on the back end of that, having a chance to compete for a chip, I think is definitely possible. So let me know what you guys think. Maybe y'all are a little bit harsher on this team. I could see some of you guys in the comments being like, I don't know, top 10, top 12. I'm maybe a little bit more optimistic on some of these squads. I kind of see the team building going on here, but let me know in the comments what y'all think. As always, if you like the video, smash that like button, subscribe. We're gonna keep putting out content on this channel for y'all. The Call of Duty Next coming up next week, so I'm excited for that. The beta's coming out, excited for that. So stay tuned for more content. As always, guys, we'll see you in the next one.